companies that are profitable storing their profits in Bitcoin. That's the quote unquote treasury company that gets me up in the morning, that's excited about what we're doing here, is people actually producing value for the world, making things, products that people want to buy and doing it profitably, and then taking that profit, storing their time and energy in a better form of money. What I was talking about, the 13%, I think is the amount of claims owed by MicroStrategy compared to their Bitcoin stack. They have so much Bitcoin and so little relative leverage. But some of these like other companies, they're over 50% levered against their Bitcoin. And I don't think that's going to end well. There's just so much more than like some guy in a lab coat figured something out in a Erlenmeyer flask in a beaker, and that's the answer to everything.
I think Daniel I had on before, and now he connected me with you, and it's freaking awesome to have you on now.
Yeah, Daniel was our founder. He's the one who started Sovereign. He put a ton of work in. Unfortunately, he's just had some personal health issues, and I won't get too much into it to respect his privacy, but he's had to take a step back and effectively has deputized me, and I'm eternally grateful for him for doing that. He's been incredibly gracious, and I couldn't ask anything more of him to sort of turn the operation over to me and do a lot of the stuff he was doing. So we miss Daniel dearly. I pray for him every single day, and I hope he can come back soon. And I know he wants to be a part of this. I know he wants to be contributing, but just some unfortunate health circumstances that don't allow him to do it. So great guy, wonderful guy, great founder, and we're itching to have him back. So
it's a reminder of how health and time, and they're very intercorrelated, are the only thing that are like, okay, not the only thing, like family and all, like there's a lot of things in there, but like health and time is like so much more valuable than Bitcoin itself, because a lot of people say like, oh, Bitcoin, and like I eat shitty instant noodle the rest of my life. I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. You probably should eat something better.
The rest of your life is going to be very short. And you know, that's such a great point. I really haven't shared this publicly. I put a post on Nostr, a couple of years ago, maybe, and maybe a year and a half ago, and I had some serious health concerns. Probably 2 years ago. I still have, to this day, I have absolutely no idea what it was. I had some really scary stuff I would get crazy heart palpitations, and wasn't a panic attack, wasn't anything. It just, my entire body felt like every blood vessel was about to explode. There were a couple times where, I was like, I'm going to go into cardiac arrest here. Got all sorts of tests. Everything was fine. And I'll never forget, I was on a work trip at the time in New Mexico, and I was, the high altitude in New Mexico was just exacerbating the problem, making it even worse. And the plane flight out there, I thought I was going to have to tell him to ground the plane. I didn't think I was going to be able to take off. It was like that serious. I don't know, by the grace of God, I got in the air, and when we got to altitude, I felt better for some reason. Landed, and I was just sitting in the hotel room. It was like maybe like April of 23, something like that. And I'm sitting there, and I'm going, I have to start telling my wife, she knows how to access all the Bitcoin. We've had this conversation before, but I'm like, I really am going to have to tell her, we need to walk through this. We need to do this now. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to be here. Like, I don't know, it's crazy. Or I think it was April of 24, because my wife was pregnant at the time, and I was like, I might not even like see my son be born. And it was just really, it was so scary. And at that, everything snapped into focus at this point. It's like, it doesn't even matter how much Bitcoin I have. Like, if I'm not here, it's all irrelevant. And, thankfully, I slowly started to recover, slowly started to feel better. I don't, to this day, I have no idea how, why, what led to my recovery, why I'm still here today. And it was just a very humbling experience. And all of a sudden, Bitcoin really doesn't matter if your health's not in order very, very, very quickly. So, sorry for the long tangent that kind of came out here at the beginning, but just wanted to share that
I love that.
anecdote.
And
Yeah.
I love that. But it, a small side tangent, all the great speakers are always apologizing for the long tangents. And I know personally, um, the listeners love exactly those tangents. So you at least on my podcast, you definitely don't have to apologize for long tangents, because I know I love them and all my listeners love them.
Awesome. All right. Well, no more apologies, and maybe that won't be the last one. We'll see here.
But it's really interesting. I've talked, like I have thankfully I haven't gotten to the I haven't gone for anything similar. I have some here and there, some health problems, but nothing ever serious. The closest thing maybe that I had, like, was end of last year, where I kind of had a panic attack. Not like really, like, did not vomit, anything like that. I was just freaking overworked, and then my body reacted, and then I, like, oh shit, I should prioritize life and not work. And then I did that, and since then, like, I'm super fine. But I think it's very hard to understand for me and for a lot of the listeners that have never gone through something like that, what you actually go through if you fear for your own life. Like, I heard a lot of stories, and I might could talk about it, but like, actually being in the moment, just I think that feels very different.
Yeah, it's so true. And I made a lot of praying, a lot of discussions with God, and maybe that was His way of being like, "Hey, you need to get your priorities in order. You're focusing on the wrong things. Look at what's most important." And I don't know. I still don't know. But you really start to have some deep introspection, and you start looking back at yourself too, like, what have I done with my life? Like, what if this is the end? Did I just waste, I think I was 40 at the time. Did I waste 39 years of my life? Like, what am I doing here? And um, I will say it absolutely grounded me. I way more appreciative, way more grateful for the things we have, and the people around me, and it absolutely puts a new lens on life that you almost, we can talk about this, we can say we experience these things, but until you really live it, it's almost inexplicable to someone who hasn't had that experience. So
I think so too. Um, in that moment, or like after that moment, did you change something of, like, diet, or like anything that you like, or like work related stuff, like relationships, like anything?
no, I mean, I was on a pretty strict carnivore diet as it was. I did notice that I felt better the more I adhered to like strict carnivore. Like, if I mixed in some vegetables or any sugar or something, that would really make things bad. So I went like super, super hardcore on that front. So I kind of like tripled down on what I had already been doing. Um, but I absolutely, I wouldn't say I changed anything per se in necessarily what I was doing, or the like the way I lived, but my attitude and my focus on things completely changed. Like, my priorities in life, work went way down the list. I was like, work is, so less important compared to time with my family, time with my wife, time hopefully with our son, or we didn't know it was a son at the time, but and that's what really matters. So I really shifted the priorities of my life around, and then I just had a newfound appreciation and gratitude for life, and sort of, I don't want to say like anger, or uh, being upset, or black pilled, or whatever you want to call it. Sort of just the negative, the portion of life I looked at negatively, it basically completely went away. It's like, you know, we're we're not in a war torn zone. We're not starving. I mean, like all these things are, really, just my framing of how thankful I am for everything I have really shifted. And honestly, it's made it way healthier. Like I feel like I'm much calmer, much more relaxed. I don't get as easily agitated. I get, I have much more patience. Just having gone through that.
So much of health starts in the mind, I think. If I think if I'm not sure about that. Like I haven't researched also deeply, but I have that weird feeling that if you have the right mindset and if you have the right mind towards things, that illnesses and sicknesses don't come your way that easily. Obviously, like there are things that will come your way no matter what you think. And diet is a huge part of it. Movement is a huge part of it. And like there are a lot of different factors towards that. But a lot of it, I think, is just like in your mind. And there's those studies where you can think your way to a sickness. Like if you think long and hard enough, at some point your head actually will have a headache if you really want a headache. And so I think this is in your story such a nice one because you're like you cannot put the finger on like what it actually was, but I think the mind shift, there's like this mind going on and like all the bad things are vanished from the mind. I think this clears out your life and all of a sudden, like, especially if it's heart related,
Yeah.
where a lot of like unconscious stress can come in. Like I'm not a doctor, but I would guess that had a huge impact on improving your overall health.
I don't doubt there was, once I had that sort of psychological reframing of everything. I mean, things did get better. How much that contributed to it, how much of it was just something my body needed to clear up, or we'll never know. But certainly, when I did have that sort of mindset, when I hit rock bottom, for lack of a better term, and then kind of just like I kind of gave up. I kind of was like, okay, it is what it is at this point. If I'm gonna, be walking down the street and, you know, have a heart attack and fall over at some point, like, you know, and I didn't, just speaking personally, I didn't take the vaccine or anything like that. And so I was like, it's not, I didn't take any drugs. I didn't take any, pharmaceutical anything. And so it was like, I know it's not that. So what could it be? I have no idea. And so, but yeah, it was kind of at that point where I just kind of gave up and was like, all right, God, I, I'm out, like, I don't know what more you want from me. Like, if this is my time, it's my time. And it's funny you say that. I never even really thought about it, but that is kind of the point where like things did start turning around, where it was just like, okay, I just have to accept fate. And that is kind of when the trajectory started going the other way. So
There is a very famous Bitcoin in the German speaking community that you might not know because he's only doing in German, and it's Roman Reha, the block trainer. And he already had a YouTube channel. He already had his Bitcoin channel on Bitcoin, basically, when he was diagnosed with many different sicknesses and illnesses, where all the doctors said like, oh yeah, like you might have like 3 months left to live. And I had his story on the podcast, and he's like the number one, in my opinion, YouTuber, live streamer on Bitcoin in the German speaking community, and maybe even beyond that. He only does it in German, but he has, what is it, over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. Not a lot of Bitcoiners worldwide can beat that. Maybe like beat this Sessions, Press and Pitch, like a few others that might be bigger than that. And he does only in German. And I talked with him, and he mentioned he did a few things when he was diagnosed with like, oh yeah, like you might have like 3 months left to live with all your like sicknesses. He had like autoimmune immune disease. He had sicknesses where like his muscles were eating away, so he just like got less muscles over time. Like
Like
many
muscular
different,
dystrophy. Yeah.
yeah, like I couldn't even count them all. He started quitting his job right away. He married the girlfriend that he had at the time that he loved. And he started taking his YouTube channel, his passion was just like a passion project, all of a sudden very serious. And this is now like 4 or 5 years ago, and he still lives, and he's very, very healthy. Went really deep down the rabbit hole of food. He still enjoys nice food, for example, like pizza, and he makes that example. But he does everything himself, like everything from the pizza, like the dough and everything. He does it himself. Like if he makes pasta, he makes the pasta himself and all of that. He works out every day in the gym for himself. Like he looks super pumped and super healthy also. I'm just saying that because this is your story reminded me a little bit of his. Maybe with him like being a little bit more traumatic even, and with like actual like, oh yeah, you have that disease and like you actually probably won't make it, like certified from a doctor and like the doctor were wrong. And I'm telling you this because I think a lot of that just starts in the freaking mind of like, how do you take life? We know like how stress is evolved. There's like good stress and there's bad stress. And like good stress is like the kind of the proof of work that you're getting into. And the bad stress is kind of like you doing proof of work for someone else that you actually don't really want to do. So sorry for my long tangent now, but I think
No,
it's a
I
huge,
love
huge story.
I love it. And now you got my mind thinking, it just a lot of the stuff that's been going on the last couple of years, like to me, it's clear that there's clearly like a spiritual battle of good and evil. And there always has been. And I've always believed in good versus evil, but it just, for whatever reason, seems even more prominent in the last few years. It almost seems like we're like reaching an apex, like a world war in the spiritual realm. And to your point about the psychology and thing, there's just so much more to life that I feel like we've been. It's like get into public school, science explains everything. Stop asking questions. If we can't put an equation on it, then it's not real. And it's like I think there is so much more to life, and you know, frequencies and so many things we don't understand or has been lost throughout history that cultures used to understand, and when we don't anymore. And there's just so much more than like some guy in a lab coat figured something out in a Erlenmeyer flask in a beaker, and that's the answer to everything. Like there's just so much more.
I 100% agree. Did through this whole process your view on Bitcoin change at all? Like, did you look differently on Bitcoin through that like experience?
It's funny. It it almost I already, Bitcoiner, super low time preference, in this for the future. The Bitcoin I have is for me and my wife to survive and my kids to thrive and my kids to thrive. This is building generational wealth in the family. And I took almost an even longer point of view, an even lower time preference view that like, okay, here's what I stack for my family, and my wife, who's a Bitcoiner as well. She's got her cold card and connects to the node, and she knows how to hits up Sparrow, knows how to do everything, and it's like I know it'll be in good hands, and it's like this will kind of be the legacy I left behind, that like I set my family up for generations to come. With what I provided them. And it was like, it was a moment of seeing Bitcoin for, have you ever heard of the book Die with Zero? Uh,
No.
Okay, so it's a book. It was kind of popular in the US. It's basically like the boomer anthem. Like, go to the grave with nothing, like spend it all. And I should preface it, like there was some good advice in there, like, hey, if you want to give money to your kids, give it to them when they're 30, not when they're 50. You know, it's going to do a lot more good. And so I don't want to completely poo poo the book, but it was kind of like, hey, you know, spend everything now, have a good time, do what you want to do. If you want to give money to charity, give it away now, you know, blah, blah, blah. It was an interesting kind of thought provoking book, but it was basically like, you know, don't, don't leave anything behind. And I sort of took the frame of like, I want to leave as much as I can behind. As opposed to sort of living for me and for the now and my family and like this sort of you know, make our life better now. And then there is an element you should do that, and you know, you shouldn't be sleeping on a floor or you know, freezing in the winter, things like that. But you should also have like the longest term view possible. Like how far is your family tree going to go, and then make sure that that person has some Bitcoin. And so it like extended my view even of a Bitcoin being you know, I think Michael Saylor calls it 1,000 year money. I mean, it could be a 10,000 year money. You know, we don't know. So
Very, very true. There was one guest on who said, kind of echoing the thing of like live rich and die broke, which yeah, like I can see that argument, and I do think you should spend your Bitcoin. I do think you should use it because it is a tool and it should be used. But there is a great thing that you can do to build generational wealth and give your kids something to rely on. Potentially, if you have like 1 Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoin, whatever you have, if you really pay attention and your kid pays attention to that and your grandkids pay attention to that, you could make a line of your family that never has to worry about the money part and never has to worry about that. And what happens with people that don't have to worry about money? They can really like do something with their life beyond the worry on that. And I mean, there are some bad examples of like trust fund kids that like completely go like, there are negative examples of a dad leaving a lot of money for the kids, of like how the kid also can go like a very bad route. But in general, like I like the idea. And if your kid cannot handle the money, it's not a testament that we shouldn't give them money through inheritance. It's more a testament of bad parenting, I guess.
what? No, that's exactly right. Like you know, these trust fund kids, these negative kids, they get money plus no parental guidance. That's the combination that turns these monsters out. It's the dad's not there because he's spending all his time building this wealth, and then he just hands the wealth over. Whereas something like Bitcoin, it's like you need to steward this. You need to explain this to your children. You need to be a good parent. You need the guidance, and then you know that moves down the generational ladder as opposed to just here's your inheritance. Here's 1 Bitcoin when you're 20. It's worth, you know, God knows what in, you know, 20 years from now, and you know, just go do debaucherous whatever you want to do, you know, as libertine as you can possibly get. And like that's not being a good steward of the money. That's not the sort of general wealth I'm talking about. I'm talking about exactly what you were talking about, where you provide them the opportunity to not have to worry about the money. Now go build something. Now go do something. I mean, you know, I think back, I left my corporate job that I was in for almost 20 years to come work at Sovereign. And it was only because I didn't have to worry about like, you know, my day-to-day expenses being covered over the next 12 to 18 months. It's like I can go do something I want to do. And now we're starting a business. We're, you know, getting our, you know, clients in the door. We're help onboarding businesses. We're watching companies adopt a Bitcoin standard. And I mean, it's so cool. We're building something of value as opposed to just being, you know, some corporate slave or or whatever, where you're just there for a paycheck because you're worried about your immediate needs and survival, as opposed to actually having the ability to build something.
And I completely forgot about that. I usually start off my podcast with asking like, who are you and
Oh,
why you excited
yes.
about
Yeah.
Bitcoin? But I will just do it now in the middle of the podcast. Well, why not?
Yeah,
Give us an overview.
we got sidetracked. So yes, I spent almost 20 years in traditional finance, working for a commercial bank. I had almost the entire time I worked in what was called managed assets, aka distressed assets, special assets, basically struggling borrowers. And I got pulled in the great financial crisis, as many banks were just scrambling for bodies to handle all of the defaulted loans. And back then, this was pre-Dodd-Frank, so we were handling residential real estate, commercial real estate, small businesses, auto, name an asset class, I probably have dealt with it. And so we just got pulled in, and it was basically figure it out as you go, deal with these borrowers, deal with these companies, and spent the next 16, 17 years just continuing to do that, and ended up for the last sort of decade of my career just exclusively dealing with middle market businesses and companies, you know, machine shops, production facilities, service companies, these sorts of things, traditional balance sheet, cash, AR, inventory, accounts payable, that kind of stuff. And I started to see a lot of businesses that were profitable on paper, but had to continue to borrow to basically stay afloat. And so maybe they had a 3%, 4% cash flow through. CPI said it was 2%. You should be ahead. Your business is outperforming CPI. Well, every Bitcoiner knows the real inflation rate's around 7, 8%. And if you haven't figured that out as a business owner, you think you're doing well, but you're actually losing real purchasing power in your business. And the only way to plug that gap is to borrow. So you take on more debt. And as that compounds over time, you're no longer able to function as a business, and then you end up on my desk. And I started seeing that more and more, especially after the COVID stimulus money came into society. A lot of these business owners just took the money. They bought stuff they didn't need. The money was all fungible, so you did just use, in the United States here, you just had to quote unquote use it for payroll, but it's like, well, the money still came in, but they still have money from the business. So, okay, well, now we have this huge influx of capital. What do we want to buy? What do we want to do with this? Let's hire a bunch of people. Let's buy a bunch of cars, put it through the business. And it, a lot of the businesses in 22, 23, 24 started to come out of sort of, I call it like the stimulus hangover. And they hadn't handled their money wisely. They had blown a lot of it, and their product input costs were going through the roof. I mean, things were costing twice as much, 3 times as much. I mean, crazy increases to input costs, and the business owners just didn't really understand what was going on. They couldn't pass the cost on to their customers. And I just saw more and more of this. And I, as a Bitcoiner, I was like, I know the problem. I know exactly what's going on here. How do I communicate this to these businesses? I can't really be like, hey, put a bunch of Bitcoin on your balance sheet, especially as you're struggling. You needed to do this when you got the money. It's too late now. And was just looking for opportunities in the space to take my skill set, apply it in some way, shape, or form to something in the Bitcoin world. I didn't really know what. I had been looking. I applied for maybe some like accounting jobs or some sales roles, or things that really weren't suited, but I was kind of just trying to get out of the corporate world. And they weren't great fits, but it was like I could make it work. And then I saw a post on bitcoinerjobs.com for a consultant role at Sovereign. And it was exactly what I was looking for, helping businesses understand Bitcoin, adopt it, put it on their balance sheet, before they start to have trouble, get ahead of the problem. you know, uh, Prevention is worth, or what is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I was like, okay, this is our awesome opportunity. Came on to Sovereign as a consultant in November of last year. I actually got approval from my corporate overlords to do up to 5 hours a week of consulting for businesses. And then I had a lot of a really unfortunate situation happen at the place I was working. And um, at the same time, I've basically been told I was incapable of handling a deal that I, had been doing this for almost 20 years, like handled many deals like it. It was a very odd situation, a very weird decision by the people in the C-suite of my company. And at the same time, Daniel, who we talked about earlier, was asking if I wanted to take on a more prominent role in the company, help get some of the stuff off his plate, more of like a COO or co-CEO type role. And I said, yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. But if I'm going to do it, I need to commit full time. I need to I need to not have one foot in both worlds. And if we're going to do this and you're okay with it, then I'm going to leave my old job. And it was, not coincidental that that situation had happened. And I just kind of said, I'm going to go do this full time. And Daniel said, absolutely. If you're willing to do it, let's do it. And so I went on paternity leave. We had our first kid back in January, and the hour back in the office from paternity leave, I walked into my boss's office and put in my 2 weeks and told them I'd be coming to run this company. And that was back in March. And here we are 6 months later. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So
I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. You get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I love that. What's your take on the rising of Bitcoin treasury companies? This cycle has been tremendous in that because of like I've fought with Seyr coming in 2020. I fought more more companies that adopt Bitcoin on their treasury will come. And it was a very slow start. I mean, we had some like prominent people. We had we had Tesla, we had PayPal, we had a lot of like interesting projects, but not a lot. And now still we have not a lot, but like it keeps like accelerating more and more of like businesses actually putting Bitcoin on the treasury. How do you take that?
Well, I have so many thoughts on this, and we won't get into all of them. I mean, I could do 3 hours on this subject alone. But, I think there's a difference between what you're talking about in terms of PayPal, Tesla, and even MicroStrategy at the beginning, where they were basically taking profits from their business or some capital, putting it into Bitcoin. And it's like, okay, this is shoring up our balance sheet. This is a capital reserve asset. We're going to use this for capital projects in the future, for dividends, for distributions. It's to hold our savings in a better money. And it's turned into this sort of financial engineering alchemy thing that was inevitable. I mean, Pierre Rochard wrote about this in 2014, one of my favorite Bitcoin articles of all time about the speculative attack. Like, this was inevitable. And you have A+ players at that game at a company like Strategy who are just, they're the Michael Jordan of that game, of the fiat arbitrage game. And there's clearly a demand for the products that they're putting out there. There's a demand for people who don't want to hold their own Bitcoin. And I find that disappointing. I find it unfortunate that pensions, hedge funds, individuals are so lazy that they're just like, I'll just go into my Charles Schwab account and get this paper instrument, and I'm not even going to learn anything. I'm just going to get something because it's in the news, and this is an outlet to do it. I'm so scared of losing my job as a hedge fund manager. As a pension manager, what an exciting career. I get to sit and earn 3.5% for a bunch of British people. Like, awesome. I'm so scared of losing that job that we're just not going to buy any Bitcoin, or we'll buy some like third order derivative of a preferred offering, and that'll get us an extra 2% in our portfolios, and I won't get fired. Like, so I this was inevitable. It was going to come, and there's in my mind there's Strategy, and then there's everyone else. There's all a bunch of copycats, and I don't really see any differentiation between. Now you have some company like a MetaPlanet, where Japan is such a closed off economy, and they've tapped the Japanese market. Like, okay, I get that. That makes sense. You're going to get a bunch of capital from Japan. Maybe there's a play in pick your other country that has closed off capital markets. But outside of opportunities like that, I don't really see how there's going to be a benefit for company 8, 9, 10, 11. What excites me and what we're trying to do at Sovereign is, like you were talking about earlier with Tesla, PayPal, companies that are profitable, storing their profits in Bitcoin. And that's the quote unquote treasury company that gets me up in the morning, that's excited about what we're doing here, is people actually producing value for the world, making things, products that people want to buy, and doing it profitably, and then taking that profit, storing their time and energy in a better form of money, and using that to capitalize their business. And that's what I look forward to. That's what's exciting to me. the financial alchemy it's going to happen. It's going to be done. It's going to take, maybe, I don't know how long it's going to take until these people, these fund owners, these, or individuals just start saying, I'm not going to contribute to my 401k anymore. I'm just going to buy Bitcoin. I mean, I think that's, decades and decades away. That'll eventually happen. And then in the interim, we'll get all this stuff that doesn't really excite me or get me going. But companies that are profitable, putting on their balance sheet, I mean, even there's just no reason Amazon shouldn't do this. Apple shouldn't do this. Like that's exciting and cool is when companies like that start saying, "Hey, we're going to take a portion of our cash and put it on here. We're not going to do a stock buyback. We're going to buy Bitcoin instead." Not like, "Hey, we're going to issue some Class B preferred stock and give you a 10% coupon, and then we're going to go buy Bitcoin with that." I don't know that. I, like I said, it's going to happen, but it just doesn't excite me. So,
could those Bitcoin, like those fiat game Bitcoin treasury companies, let's call them like that, because my podcast also stores all the wealth in Bitcoin, and I could be called the Bitcoin treasury companies, and I'm very far away from that. Could those fiat game Bitcoin treasury companies like mostly go to bust? I say mostly because I do think they provide some service, but like I don't know if we need like 100 of them.
well, I would say as long as your leverage is below Bitcoin's CAGR, I think you should be fine. That's theoretically, right? So the question is, when do you get caught off sides? In that it's a trade at the end of the day. So you're levering up your company, you're taking on leverage. When is the drawdown more than your base plus the appreciation? So as long as your Bitcoin is appreciating and you're quote unquote responsibly levered, in theory, as long as the fiat system exists, you can make it. It's just the companies that are going to get cleaned out and people are going to get wrecked on are the ones that over lever. And that's the problem with this whole play, is that to differentiate yourself, they have this metric, right? Like a Bitcoin per share or whatever it is. So you're constantly trying to increase that. And the only way to increase that via financial alchemy, not running an actual profitable business and making tons of money on really good margins and then plowing that back into Bitcoin, is to go farther and farther out on the risk curve, which requires more and more leverage. So, as long as you don't end up too far down that risk curve, you can survive. The question is, what is that number? When is the time? And you're basically just a day trader at that point, trying to figure out is what's Bitcoin's appreciation versus my leverage. And I don't know. I would not like to be kept up at night thinking about those things or trying to toe that fine line. And that's why I say there's strategy, and strategy is so far on. I think they have like 13% leverage or something. Like they'll be fine. Assuming they don't go out and 4x their leverage or something like that, they're going to be fine. But like these other companies, it's just a game. At the end of the day, it's a game of fiat arbitrage and towing the line between your leverage and Bitcoin's appreciation. And I don't know. That's a dicey game that I don't want to play. So.
How is that actually measured? How much leverage you have? Is it that the depth in association with how many assets they have, or in association with like their market cap, or like how is that measured?
Yeah, so there's different metrics. I think the what I was talking about, the 13%, I think is the amount of claims owed by MicroStrategy compared to their Bitcoin stack. That's
okay.
So yeah, they're like in a different stratosphere of they have so much Bitcoin and so little relative leverage that it's kind of real. But some of these like other companies are they're over 50% levered against their Bitcoin. And I don't think that's going to end well if and when we have a big drawdown here.
Yeah, over 50%. And why? I don't fully like. Why is it a problem? Why is like a problem if the leverage is above the Bitcoin CAGR? I mean, I like, just full disclosure, I don't deal with debt. I don't like leverage. I got Bitcoin income more than I have Bitcoin expenses. So that's why I came to the conclusion of like, either I go into debt with fiat, to being able not to sell my Bitcoin, or just sell my Bitcoin every month a little bit. Like, selling sounds so weird. I still have more Bitcoin every month, but like,
Yes, yeah,
exchanging some Bitcoin for fiat to pay some
of
bills.
course. Yeah.
And I made that conscious decision of like, I do not want to have that. I use my Bitcoin as I want. But like, why do you think is there like a magical like line between the Bitcoin CAGR?
So there's not a magical line. And there's other factors of what other debt you have and what schedule those are on, and is it fixed debt? And there's a lot of different things to think about there. But the general concept is that if your underlying collateral is growing faster than your debt, you can effectively do it forever. So if the increase in your debt is less than the increase in your collateral, then as long as that works for you, you can continue that into perpetuity. The problem is that Bitcoin's annual CAGR may be 45-50%, but it's 300 one year, 200 one year, and then it's negative 75 another year. And so you could end up in a situation where you have that big down year, or even down month, or down quarter, or whatever, and then you get caught off sides where now you're under collateralized. Your Bitcoin is now worth less than your debt, and that's when you get margin called, and then you get fully liquidated. And so it's not a perfect 1-to-1, and your leverage ratios would depend on other things, but it's just sort of a general concept that if you can grow your debt at a slower pace than the appreciation of your collateral, you can do that forever. That's sort of the general concept.
Interesting. Yeah, but I thought about it because I think it's highly unlikely that Bitcoin, like a 50% CAGR or like above 50% CAGR, like if someone had like 60% leverage, let's say they would need like a 75% CAGR, that to be continued within the next, like, I don't know, 10 years, very hard. I mean, I just had a podcast guest on like today. It will probably be already published in a few days. Yeah. That says like, Bitcoin will double till ever every year. I'm like, I don't know. But outside of that situation, like a 55% CAGR, 60% CAGR, that would be huge.
Yeah, it's a massive, and like I said, it's, again, if you have a 60% CAGR and you're depending on what if you're 65% levered, so you're borrowing 65% of your Bitcoin stack, and then Bitcoin goes up six. So say you have $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, you're buying $65,000. So your Bitcoin then goes up 60% the next year, so it's 160,000. So now you're at 65 to 160,000, which is around 40%, something like that. So now you're repricing it. So if you stay there, now you can withstand a like a 75% drawdown. But a lot of these companies, what they're going to want to do is increase it and then build their stack on top of it. So as they increase it, they try to add more Bitcoin. And that's where the trouble comes in, is if you get a drawdown of the Bitcoin to a point where it's lower than you're at the actual, or excuse me, if the collateral value goes lower than your actual debt, or meets it, that's when you get margin called. And that's where the trouble comes in. So it's not a perfect, like, CAGR's 29 and your leverage is 28. That's not exactly how it works. But just the general concept is that you're increasing your debt less than the value of Bitcoin is appreciating. Is
And
the general concept. Yeah.
interesting. So
Yeah.
they're like, I find Bitcoin treasury companies fascinating because there's a whole new world within Bitcoin. Like very different people, very different vibe. And I do think there is a lot of like overlap between the ICO boom in 2000, what was it, 2017,
17.
and maybe also the NFT thing in 2021, and now like the treasury companies, which is a very big shame because I love seeing companies putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Like that's an amazing thing. I'm just not a fan of debt, but I guess if you use it in a smart way and you're doing it okay, like I'm fine with that. I think it's the maybe I'm just hedging myself also because if I tell everyone like don't go to leverage, don't do that, that's always a safe way. Nobody will get wrecked if they don't use leverage. If I say like, oh, like leverage is okay, leverage is good, and someone because of what I said goes on to leverage and he gets wrecked, he's like, oh, like what? Why did you say that? Like, so like maybe it's just like also a kind of a hedge for myself.
Definitely the most conservative approach is don't use leverage, but Jack Mallers, I think, made the best analogy that leverage is like fire. It can heat your home or it can burn it to the ground. And it's a tool in the fiat system. Unfortunately, we all have bills to pay and other things like that. And some of us would rather borrow against our Bitcoin than sell it for many, many reasons. The least of which being is what we talked about earlier, that if you're borrowing less than the appreciation of your Bitcoin each year, well, you kept your Bitcoin and your debt's actually getting cheaper. So you can borrow to a certain point, and now you're having to repay less and less because your collateral is increasing at a greater amount than your debt. But that requires low leverage, careful precision, and being smart about it. And you could very easily see how someone gets addicted to clicking a button, having dollars in their account right away, and like, boom, we're going to go spend this. Or maybe I wouldn't buy this, but hey, all I got to do is click this button, and now I have this money available to me. And they get over levered and then get margin call and get liquidated. And now you have no Bitcoin from where you started. Whereas hey, if you had just borrowed 10%, 15%, something like that, you probably would have been fine. um, a big part of what you're talking about is it is the safe thing to just tell people don't do it, because you don't know how individuals are going to react to the situation. You can't control them when they, it's like, hey, go into the candy store, but just get like one sucker and then come out. And it's like, well, you don't know what happens when you let them in that candy store. They might walk out with a garbage bag full of, 19 different candies and go out and eat a bunch of crap. So like, it's really, really hard to advise someone to go do something that could be beneficial, but if used wrong, will be so detrimental. Like the benefits of the leverage are far outweighed by the downside if things go wrong.
I 100% agree. I love the analogy with the candy because it is very true. Like once you get like the first loan and you're like, oh, okay, I just press that buttons, I commit those forms, and all of a sudden I have like those 10 grands in my bank account. Why don't I get 5K more? Why don't I get like 20K more? Like, why don't I get this more? And all of a sudden you're living in that dreamland of like, there's free money. And as some wise man once said, there's no free lunch. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, fuck, I'm bankrupt.
Well, it's the same thing with fractional reserve lending, right? Like the goldsmiths had the gold, and then they issued the coupons, and they were like, or the notes, or whatever you want to call them, certificates, and they were like, oh, only like 50% of the people are coming in to get their gold. Maybe we'll just maybe we'll only keep like 90% of the gold here. That'll be fine. And then maybe like 88%. Oh, only 40% of the people are coming in. Okay, 78. And before you know it, you just keep going and going and going. And it's just this incremental creep. And then it's like, okay. And then at some point that has to end because more people than the goals you have come in and ask for it. More debt than you have Bitcoin all of a sudden shows up. And, that's when there's a run on you as a goldsmith. And that's when you get liquidated as a Bitcoiner. So it's a slippery slope that it requires discipline. And some people can do that. Some people can successfully function in that system, apply appropriate discipline and use it correctly. But you just don't know how the person on the other side of the equation is going to react when they get that, like you said, that first hit. And then it's like, well, maybe a little more, maybe a little more. What's the harm? Oh, Bitcoin's up like 5% today. I can get a little more. And then there's a 9% drop the next day. And it's like, so you just don't know how people are going to react. And even people that may seem responsible and have done everything else correctly in their life and have lived responsible lives, and you just don't know when they're tempted with that ability to just sort of get money and get what they want instantly. So
the creature of Jekyll Island.
Yeah, it's almost like they knew what they were doing, huh? Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Really cool. I have one question that I asked each and every one of my new guests on the show, and the question is, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
Oh man. Well, okay. There's definitely a lot of stuff
there are many thoughts on your head, I see.
Yes, yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot you can learn from me on the food side. I have done extensive research on the food. I had horrific allergies, asthma, eczema, cured it all myself with with changing my diet and getting on a ketogenic diet and cutting sugar out and all these things. So I can guarantee you can learn that from me. However, I have in the last year or so been really going down this old world rabbit hole of this idea of our history not being accurate, potentially civilizations that were wiped out by some sort of cataclysm, and we kind of walked into the remnants of what they had. I mean, you look at things like a Capitol building in Helena, Montana, which to this day has only 8,000 people living there. Still to this day, a Capitol building that looks like the White House. I mean, how did that get there? When was it built? How did people with chisels and no power tools and no electricity and donkeys and horses? I mean, how did they even get the materials there to build that? Then have an architect in a town. I think at the time it was like there were like 1,500 people living there. I mean, it's just literally impossible for some of these structures to be built. I know you're over in Europe. Some of the stuff in Vienna and Budapest and Prague. I mean, you just look at these structures and you're like, they were not building these with slaves, no electricity. I mean, how did Michelangelo, he just painted the Sistine Chapel by like fire at night, like it just, none of it really makes any sense. I don't know the real history. I don't know what actually happened, but I do know what they're telling us is just, it's logistically impossible. It is not, the Museum of Science and Industry. I live in Chicago. The Museum of Science and Industry here, if you look at the Wikipedia entry, they say it was built in like 1 year just for the World Fair. It was just put together in a year. I mean, if you've seen this building, the outside and the inside are I mean, it looks like something out of old world Europe. Like you can't believe how beautiful and incredible it is. It's like no one built this in a year. Even if they did build this in 1893, it wasn't in 1 year. It's just not possible. So I would say I would encourage people to check that rabbit hole out, to explore those ideas a little more and pique your curiosity. You're a Bitcoiner. You're already skeptical of everything. You don't trust the government. You don't trust what's being told to you. I would not trust what's being told to you. and just dig in and see what you find. And like I said, I don't have the answers. I don't know the answers, but it's been fun to learn about. It's been fun to think about. There's all sorts of possibilities of what really happened, and we'll probably never know is the reality. But that's the reality, is we don't know, and Wikipedia doesn't know either, even though they claim to know. So I'll leave it at that.
I love that. And I think critical thinking is something that Bitcoiners really embrace. And that I always say there's a fine line because we do have to trust things. We do have to like also live, and there's some like value to like not questioning everything. And like a couple of weeks ago, we had that deep discussion. But you should definitely verify and critical think on the important parts in life. You know, like money, like food, like health, sports, like all those things like that really impact your life very, very deeply. It's so important that you nail those. And if you nail those, like go on and explore more and go deeper into things to learn. And so I think Bitcoiners are prone to that, and I love that. And it's also every time I'm going to a meetup, like there's so many freaking interesting things coming out. And yeah, I'm just very happy that I get to be a host in a community that has so many things, so many interesting things also to really say.
Well, along those lines too, like, don't think you have to know everything. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the old world. Like, I just accept that there's some things I don't know and will never know. And, you can have all sorts of theories, ideas, but you may just never know. And that's okay. Like, just wait till you get to heaven or Valhalla or, whatever you believe in. Or maybe you just go to if you're atheist or agnostic, maybe you just go to your grave not knowing. And like, that's okay too. But to your point, be willing to question these things, be inquisitive, and then uh, figure out what you can, do your best. But it's okay to not have like all the answers and know 100% perfectly. You don't have to, just spend a ton of time going down crazy rabbit holes that have no end. If like that may not be satisfying, that may not be worth your time. And so just accepting that there's things beyond our knowledge, beyond we're, like I said, we're all Bitcoiners. You've already checked your ego once, just check it again, that we may not know everything, and that's okay.
100%. We have ended in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, what would it take? I mean, it's a hard one. What would it take for the Bitcoin protocol to fail?
The actual protocol itself, I would say there would have to be a bug. I think there's a way where the network fails if we have too centralized of mining and people are able to co-opt the network via mining, but that's not really a protocol failure. That's more of just a network failure. So I would say for the protocol to actually fail, I mean, we're really talking about a bug in the code. I guess you could also have a situation where there is consensus amongst the nodes that agrees to a hard fork that turned out to have something in it. That goes back to a bug though, or some line of code in it that wasn't contemplated, where the nodes agree to a hard fork, and then later down the line it turns up that there was a kill switch at block 1,200,000 or something like that wasn't caught. So I guess at the end of the day, the root-based problem would have to be something wrong with the code that was granted consensus by the nodes.
That would be fun, a kill switch at some block.
Yeah, it'd be a good movie at least,
That would be one heck of a movie.
Yeah.
Really cool. Thank you so much, Brandon. It was really, really cool to have you on. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and reach out to you?
Yeah, so sovereign.io, spelled like it is on the shirt here, SOVREIGN.io is the company website. You can reach out to us on there. The Sovereign account is also on LinkedIn. I personally am on LinkedIn, Brandon Karpoulos. And we have an X account as well. I am also I am only on Nostr, and my name is Plebe Anon. I used to be an Anon, but no longer. So I'm fully doxxed and out there. That's probably the best place to reach me personally. Or like I said, just go to the company website and shoot us an email. I get them all. So I will always respond to you, and love connecting with people and working on ways to collaborate with other people in the Bitcoin space and people outside the Bitcoin space as well. If you have someone in your life or a business or a person that's like asking about Bitcoin and you just don't have the time or don't want to do it and would like to send them somewhere, feel free to point them to us as well. So
Awesome. Man, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow for another episode.